Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about only six of the most important champions in the game. So if you don't have an increased defense champion on your team, 60% increased defense on a 3-turn cooldown on all allies, well, maybe you're missing out. Maybe you're struggling with progression and this will help you out. So again, let's go over those factors. What makes these champions so unique? There's 2 rares and there's 4 epics. First of all, how many can you guys name before I actually jump into the list? I actually didn't know one of these champions. I knew that she had the increased defense. I was not aware that when booked, it was actually on a 3-turn cooldown to all allies. So again, stay tuned, see if you can get all 6 before I actually jump into the list. But again, 2 reasons you want these champions. Number 1 is progression. You're dying. Your champions aren't surviving. Well, easy, right? You add a great champion with a 3-turn cooldown of the strong version of increased defense, gonna help you out, gonna help you get to that next level of faction wars or that next level of the whatever dungeon that you're focusing on, okay? And on top of that, well, increased defense buff is essentially an increased damage buff akin to increased attack for champions that deal damage based off of their defense. So a great champion, one of these 6 champions would be a great champion to pair your defensive based damage dealers on your team. If you're lucky enough to have a Razin, or if you have a Sill of the Drakes, champions like that. Grizzle Jarrow, who actually is on this list, we'll go ahead and just start with him because he's a great champion. Those are champions that do damage based on defense, so an increased defense is going to just allow them to do 60% more damage, or I guess it's not exactly that, but you guys get it. 60% more defense, aka it's a buff on their attack as well. So let's go ahead and start with Grizzle Jarrow, who's one of my favorite champions in the game. Definitely an unsung hero. I guess the word is kind of out on Grizzled that he is really good. And where the heck is he? My bad. He's in the beginning, right? Okay, there he goes. Grizzle Jarrow. So let me move myself over a little bit here. Grizzle Jarrow, first of all, man, he might not be the coolest looking dwarf, although he's pretty cool looking. But man, his kit is just solid, right? On his A1, has a heal reduction, again, damage based on defense. On his A2, he has a block debuffs on all allies for 1 turn, and again, the strong version of increased defense on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. But on Earth Stomp, which is his A3, he has an AoE attack, again, damage based off of defense. So he's doing some good damage for your team, as well as being a great support champion, a defensive-based champion for your team. I really like Grizzle Jarrow. You can build this champion out with 100% crit rate as well, so he's actually putting out some decent damage. If you want the decreased attack and the heal reduction, build him out with some accuracy as well. But Grizzle Jarrow is just a great champion. Again, you build him out with a lot of defense, put a defense chest on him, put speed boots on this champion, crit rate gauntlets, and you're going to be looking great. Put a defense ring on him, obviously, and an accuracy or a defense banner as well. I would go crit damage on the amulet on your Grizzle Jarrow. Again, if you have Grizzle Jarrow sitting in your vault, go ahead and try him out, guys. I swear, some of you guys use him. Let the other people know in the comments below that he really is a really super solid champion when you build him out, putting out a decent amount of damage, a very respectable amount of damage, and keeping your team alive. So next up, we have the first one of our rare champions. It is Marth. We talked about her a lot on the channel. She is one of the only 2 rare champions who have the strong version of increased defense on an AoE. She is my least favorite of the 2, but she's probably the most accessible because the other is Void. We'll talk about him next. But either way, she has a solid kit. Why do I not like her as much? Well, her damage is based off of attack, and her attack is very low. So she's really not helping you out with any damage at all. And she has 2 kind of mad debuffs. The weak version of decreased defense, which can be used in kind of early game against bosses, against the clan boss, especially if you're lucky enough to have a counterattack champion on your team. But still, you're probably going to want the stronger version of decreased defense anyway, so it's kind of a meh ability. She does have an AoE attack on a 3-turn cooldown on her Punishment of Gods for A2. However, again, it's based off of her attack. She doesn't have great multiplier. She's not putting out a ton of damage. It's really just for the decreased accuracy debuff, which isn't the worst in the world, but it's not one of the stronger debuffs in the game either. So not a lot of damage and kind of a meh debuff in her kit, but really Totemic Power is her big ability. It's the same really on a 3-turn cooldown, the block debuffs for 1 turn and the increased defense for 2 turns as Grizzle Jarrow's ability is essentially the same. However, it does require 3 books, albeit rare books, to get her there. So Marth is a great option for the early game going into the mid game, but I do think she scales in terms of her end game viability a little bit worse than the other champions on today's list. So next up in Undead Horde faction, the other rare champion, it's Doomscreech. Doomscreech, a really, really solid champion. I like him better than Marth. On his A1, first of all, look at his damage based on attack and HP. His A3, which is a damage dealing ability, an AoE damage dealer on a 5-turn cooldown, is all based on HP. So you want, and his HP is 20k, so it scales really well in this champion. So you want to build him out with a bunch of HP, put him in a shield set. Picture this champion, Doomscreech, built with a lot of HP, talking HP, you know, depending if you want the decreased accuracy, talking about an HP banner, talking about an HP ring, talking about HP on the chest, and this guy is going to be in a shield set. He's going to be providing just an OP shield for you, as well as increased defense. A really solid champion. So the decreased accuracy on the A1, kind of whatever, right? On his A2, though, check it out. On a 3-turn cooldown, when booked, fills the turn meter of all allies by 30% and places the increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. So you get the turn meter fill of 30% and then the increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, again on a 3-turn cooldown. Warning Screech is a really, really solid ability. Doomscreech, you build him out right. You consider, again, that shield set on this champion with the high HP and damage based on HP. He is a champion that a lot of you guys can consider actually building up, even if you're in the mid game to the late game already. If you just want a champion like this, a great support champion, no doubt about it. Shelter attacks all enemies, places a shield buff equal to 30% max HP on this champion for 2 turns. Damage increases according to this champion's current HP. It's all about HP with Doomscreech. Really solid champion. I actually might build him out and make a guide on this champion. The only critique on him is that his speed is a little low at 95. Nothing, not in the 80s, you know, but still would like to have a champion with a turn meter boost especially have a little bit higher a base speed. For that reason, I would definitely go speed boots on this champion. Pretty much the same with every single other one on the list. Next up is High Elf Fenestel. Fenestel's a great champion, man. On his A1, a chance of placing the sleep debuff. He's a champion who can put out a decent amount of damage, and he has a high base speed at 105. So nice speed on the Fenestel. And then we have the increased defense on all allies 2 turns. Heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP. Again, on a 3-turn cooldown. Oak-Skinned is a great ability because it has a strong version of increased defense and a really great heal. 25% of this champion's max HP. Well, hell, you build him out with a ton of HP and you can get almost a complete heal on all of your other allies. And again, because you're building him out with a bunch of HP, it just makes all the sense in the world to put him in a shield set as well. I think that you guys would really get a lot of utility out of Fenestel. He has an AoE on his A3. His damage is based on attack, but like Grizzle Jarrow, I would also advise you guys build out your Fenestel to have 100% crit rate, so he's putting out some damage as well, because he does, again, have the AoE attack and the decrease the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn, all on his Wither, his A3 ability. For his, I think it's just, resistant dungeons by 70. Not the best aura in the world, certainly, but not the worst aura if you're lacking one, especially for, you know, dragons, maybe resist some of those poisons, so on and so forth. So that is Fenestel. I really do believe that Fenestel is, in my opinion, top 3 non-legendary support in the game. And who doesn't? I'm sure most of you guys guessed Mausoleum Mage, right? He was going to be on the list because he is probably one of the best known increased defense buffer support champions in the game. Epic, legendary, rare, you name it. Everybody kind of knows of Mausoleum Mage. I'm sure a lot of you guys might have him just sitting in your vault. He's a solid champion. He has the block debuffs on his A2, all allies 1 turn. Also has the increased crit rate and then the increased defense on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. That's 3 buffs, 1 ability. That's nice. You compare him with Seer. In case you missed my video 2 days ago, I had a guide on him in tandem with Seer. Check that out, guys. I mean, we can just absolutely melt the opponents with the Karma Burn provided from those buffs from Mausoleum Mage onto Seer. It's just insane to see it in action, right? And then Winds of Purging removes all debuffs from all allies and heals all allies by 10% of this champion's max HP. Yeah, I'm going to say it again. Oh, it's stuff based on his max HP? Well, go ahead and put Mausoleum Mage, and I do on my mage. I have him in a, we'll go ahead and pull him up here. I have him in a shield set. A lot of these champions, right? Doomscreech, Mausoleum Mage, even Fenestel, they're really, really good when put in that shield set. These are perfect champions to build up in a shield set. So my mage, I have him, I have him in a shield in speed, even with the HP kind of low at 51k, providing that he's, an HP based heal or in his kit, right? Even with that, these shields are really nice to have. Shield set is, in my opinion, after speed, it is the best artifact set for progression in the game. If you're struggling, if you're dying in any dungeon wave, consider a shield set. And last but not least, the champion that I forgot about, if you go to Dark Elves, you go right at the beginning here, it's Captain Tamila. Captain Tamila here is a champion that, I don't think we've ever really talked about too much on the channel. She's an interesting character. On the A1, attack one enemy has a continuous heal buff on this champion for 1 turn if the attack is critical. 50% chance of landing that. On the A2, she has an increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then heals all allies by 15% of this champion's max HP. We see it again. Stay in the fight ability is really, really solid. A 3-turn cooldown. Again, you can book up and get an additional 20% on that heal. You want to put books in these champions anyway to get those cooldowns down on the increased defense abilities that they have. So that's unfortunate, but even there are some rare options for you as well. Rare books obviously a bit easier to come by in this game. So again, this ability makes her viable for a shield set. Let's say it all together. 18k base HP is not too bad as well. She also has the Exalted Guardian ability, plays a 50% ally protect buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, hence her ability to put the continuous heal on herself, help herself stay healed up throughout the fight. I would not say she is a typical what people think of when they think of an OP support champion in the game, but I think she's an interesting and viable option to you guys who might not have some of the other champions. I prefer her to Marth because she has that nice ally protect. Her role is simple: keep everybody else alive on your team, right? So I prefer her to Marth, but I would rank her if I was doing a power ranking here. I would probably go, it depends on what you need, right? If you need a little bit extra damage, go with Grizzle Jarrow. If you just need support, I'd go with a Mausoleum Mage first because of the cleanse, and then Fenestel, and then Grizzle Jarrow, Doomscreech, depending on what you need there, and then Captain Tamila. There we go. And then Marth at the end. So, guys, good luck with these champions. She's really solid. I mean, all of them are really solid. All of them, in my opinion, are 6-star worthy if you need some support, if you're struggling with progression, or if you have a lot of champions on your tag team arena team or on your dungeon team that have damage based on defense. I think that is an overall great strategy for you guys to employ inside this game. That's why, again, Grizzle Jarrow makes a lot of sense because his damage, unlike every other champion on this list, his damage is also based off of defense. So I hope I gave you guys something to think about between the HP shield sets, the increased defense with a team of all damage versus defense by defense champions. It's going to help you guys a lot. They're going to be difficult to kill because they have a lot of defense, and they're going to have even more defense because you're stacking it with this very powerful buff. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.